our city will grow. Mayor Fisher likes to say that Louisville is a compassionate city, but these words fall flat if we are not building and funding our community in a compassionate manner. Compassion is not providing a police department more funding when that police department is built on discrimination and violence towards Black and brown members of our city, with Black Louisvillians treated disproportionately by police in every area of policing, per the recent Hilliard-Hines report. Compassion is not allowing the same police department to act with impunity, allowing contracts with the Fraternal Order of Police to include harmful provisions like Article 14, Section 3, which states that the city cannot use electronic surveillance footage in the investigation of any member. Compassion is providing funding to house the houseless. Compassion is providing funding for libraries to have sufficient staffing levels and to reopen libraries that have closed, like the one in Fern Creek. Compassion is providing funding for mental health, addiction treatment, and social work programs for people in crisis, so those individuals' needs are met by those who are best prepared to help. There are many more harmful provisions in the FOP contracts that enable police misconduct and militarization and interfere with compassionate social services like the ones I've just mentioned. The 490 Project has reached out to the mayor, this council, and other community leaders to work together on this urgent problem. And to our knowledge, not a single provision has been renegotiated. Yet the mayor's proposal designates a significant percentage of the budget to LMPD and corrections. You, as Metro Council, have the unique opportunity to tie the budget directly to the outcome of the police contract negotiations. We implore you to think, what is the compassionate city that we're trying to build? What does a well-funded community, not a police department, look like? And what are you, as our elected officials, going to do about it? Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Nick Conder.
Hi, good evening, and thank you to Metro Council and all those watching at home. In 2020, a pandemic inexorably tied to climate change devastated our community, and our healthcare and economic systems buckled under the threat. The dangers of white supremacy led to the deaths of innocent people and a movement for justice that city officials sadly met with even more violence. We need a change. This year's budget is our best chance in many years to reassess our priorities and build the kind of city that Louisville's working class deserves. My name is Nick Conder. I am a citizen of District 10 here in Louisville, and I'm speaking to motivate the People's Budget, a budget amendment that you can find more information about at budget.dsalouisville.org. And I'm sure you'll hear a lot about it from other Louisvillians in the next few weeks as part of the DSA campaign for a People's Budget. The People's Budget proposes bold yet realistic alterations to the proposed Metro budget. The headline will, of course, be the reduction of $28.5 million in police funding, but how that money is reinvested in parks, libraries, and public services is just as important. Instead of spending $11 million on police overtime, we could expand public health, violence intervention, and community services. Instead of spending $7 million on new police recruits, we can reopen libraries and swimming pools and restore the Office of Sustainability. We could divest $2 million intended for surveillance equipment and create a fund for the creation of worker-owned cooperatives, a form of economic development which builds community wealth, not corporate wealth. By cutting a mere 15% from the proposed LMPD budget, we can dramatically expand the quality of life for workers in our city. The People's Budget is a beginning, not an end. If we truly want to reimagine public safety, shouldn't we be making a real commitment to the kinds of things that make a city safe? The LMPD budget has increased every year since 2004, and even in years when budget cuts forced us to close fire stations, libraries, swimming pools, and other vital services, we have had to increase the LMPD budget. What have we gotten in return? More cops haven't made us safer. Violent crime has risen, and police misconduct has embarrassed us time and again. How many national scandals and federal investigations into racial discrimination does it take for us to rethink our approach? Public safety does not come from locking people up after they've committed a crime. A safer city is one that learns why crime happens and changes the conditions which create it. A safer city is one where children can learn to read, go swimming with their friends, and breathe clean air in a well-maintained park. A safer city is one that takes the challenges of white supremacy, income inequality, and climate change seriously and makes real commitments to ending them. A safer city is one that treats the homeless, mentally ill, and those struggling with addiction with compassion and care rather than with punishment. The people's budget redirects funds from police to other public services, but it doesn't cut a dime from public safety. I urge you all to consider the amendment as you prepare the budget.
Thank you. Deborah Barnes Byers.
Good afternoon. My name is Deborah Barnes Byers. I am the project manager for Pivot to Peace program with Peace Education Program, which is a hospital violence intervention program that has been supported by Louisville Metro Government's Office for Safe and Healthy Neighborhoods since 2016. This evidence-based program and model has successfully been existent nationally since 1990. Pivot to Peace with Peace Ed has touched the lives of 130 survivors of gunshot or stabbing injuries for 5 years with a success rate of 96% of preventing re-injury or retaliation. HVIPs embrace a public health approach to violence prevention and are grounded in data that indicates victims of interpersonal violence are at elevated risk for re-injury and retaliation. Violence is a natural response born out of societal pressure and lack of adequate resources. Maslow's hierarchy of needs has determined that success cannot begin until basic needs are provided. You can't send someone who has been injured to school or work and expect positive outcomes if basic needs have not been provided and the trauma from the injury has not been addressed. Remember, violence is more than an injury with a weapon or bodily harm. Violence itself has root causes and structural inequities such as racism, oppression, poverty, including lack of food, housing, education, employment, lack of access to health resources, and mental health services. Lastly, excessive policing in the Black community must be included in this formula of structural inequities. Unfortunately, when we talk about violence, we want to focus only on what just happened. Review of the backstories, the issues, and the root causes that have contributed to the incident is critical and is often overlooked. As a resident of District 5 and the project manager for this program, I am asking for full support of Ocean's $4.5 million funding request. I know that their evidence-based initiatives will support the community and those that are impacted by violence. As a result, as a concerned citizen, I not only want to see us move forward addressing incidents of violence, but also the root causes in order to create a lasting impact for the future. In 2020, many people did not survive our double pandemic of COVID-19 and the increase of violence. It's time to not only prepare to remove our face masks, but also correct the systemic inequalities we are experiencing. Supporting Ocean's $4.5 million funding request will place us on the road to support peace and justice equitably, as well as strategically address the unfair circumstances that exist and contribute to the violence and discord in our community. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Chantrice Martin.
All right, can everyone hear me all right?
Yes, we can.
Good evening. My name is Chantrice. Thank you, Ms. Sonia, for organizing today's public comments. I'm a mother, business owner, Feed the West founder, and District 1 resident. Today, I'm advocating for a budget amendment aimed at investing $50 million into critical social services by divesting $50 million from the Louisville Metro Police Department. The current proposed budget allocates more than $200 million for police across several departments, including millions for a deflection program that Police Erica Shields admitted they are not trained for. They are asking for more money while under an active federal investigation for practices of racism and misappropriation of funds. We cannot trust LMPD's intelligence-led policing. If any of us in our jobs were under investigation, we would not be awarded money for doing the wrong thing. Respectfully, council members, we need to amend this budget and reduce LMPD funding by at least $50 million. Instead, that money can go to libraries, food justice, health equity, public works, park and rec, codes and regulations, and other vital social services that prevent the need for heavy-handed policing in the first place. We cannot continue the status quo. Please do not reward LMPD for shooting rubber bullets at children and assaulting peaceful protesters like they did just a few weeks ago and tear gassing community volunteers like myself. My son deserves libraries and clean parks way more than police deserve more money to target him, right? Look, I want to see two things. One, support my $50 million budget amendment to divest from police and invest in social services. This is supported by thousands of Louisville residents. And second, house the deflection program as far away from LMPD as possible. It would be better situated with a mental health professional who already works on equity. Across the country, racism has been declared as a public health crisis. If racism is a public health crisis, then surely LMPD is a tumor, and a tumor cannot cure itself. LMPD beat peaceful protesters. They barricaded 26 and Broadway during Derby, preventing thousands of residents from accessing food in the middle of a food apartheid, in the middle of a pandemic. They also prevented access from childcare, tax prep, mental health services, addiction services, and a dialysis center. LMPD hid 738,000 records documenting the sexual assault of children by LMPD officers. LMPD is under an active federal investigation by the Department of Justice. Former detectives and officers have admitted to lying and wrongfully arresting people for crimes they didn't commit. LMPD uses technology to surveil and terrorize Black and poor people. I'm urging City Council to stand with us. Approve this budget amendment to reduce LMPD funding by $50 million and redirect that money to struggling social service departments. I am tired of being scared of police when I'm not doing anything wrong. I urge you all to consider this amendment to reduce the LMPD budget by $50 million. Thank you.
Thank you. Rob Folk.
Hi, I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today. I'm Rob Folk. I'm the principal of Iroquois High School here in Jefferson County. I come to you today to talk about Evolve 502. Really quickly, I want to give you a little bit of the demographics of my school. My school is over 90% free and reduced lunch. We have over 50 languages that are spoken on our campus, and over 40% of our kids are English as a second language. We serve both the south end of Louisville, the west end of Louisville, and the corridor running through Churchill Downs. We have a really awesome campus with a lot of awesome kids. Evolve 502 has given an opportunity to students that have not had an opportunity necessarily to access college. And I want to give you 10 specific examples today on why this funding is important. Number one is Micaiah. Micaiah wants to be a nurse. She is the first generation high school graduate from her family, and hopefully she will be the first generation college graduate. Brandon wishes to go study culinary. The Evolve 502 scholarship offers him the ability to go to college. He will be a first generation college graduate. Jada also wants to be a nurse. First generation college graduate using the Evolve 502 scholarship. Demond, first generation high school graduate, hopefully first generation college graduate studying business. Nadaya, business, first generation college graduate. Hamid wants his doctorate in something. He's not sure yet, but he has the opportunity to go to college now and pursue that dream. Hussein, business, first generation high school graduate in the United States, soon to be hopefully first generation college graduate. Jemiah, working currently at Ford and will be pursuing business and college, hopefully to be a first generation college graduate. Cavante, currently working at GE, again, hopefully to be a first generation college graduate. And lastly, Dion, studying to be a phlebotomist and accessing the Evolve 502 scholarship. I cannot stress the importance that this scholarship means to students that don't traditionally have access to these types of programs. Not only that, the wraparound support that comes with it once the scholarship is given to them and they move on to the next step with intelligent, mindful folks to be able to shepherd them through that first generation college experience is absolutely critical. So I urge you on behalf of all educators of our city to continue to fund and support this, hopefully so that it can reach all the way down to the middle school level. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you. Angela Brewer.
Project.
Ms. Brewer, we
project with.
Ms. Brewer, we are unable to hear you.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry about that communication problem or technology problem. My name is Angela Brewer. I am the CEO of AE Associates in collaboration with Butterfly Center, and our project is known as the Cocoon Project. We are seeking funding of $125,000 to help assist single families, women who are homeless. We have been assisting families to be able to house and buy their own home for the past 10 years. So part of the agency legacy is we educate and then we provide community resources as well as personal development to these single family members who might be homeless if not for this program. And we have also, as we partner with the community like the Black Commerce to provide education, and also collaborate with realtors to find affordable housing for these families. And so we are seeking this money to assist us to fund this program to help more families. And we also want to not only to single family members, but everyone who is able, who is in need. Now, when I mean most families who are housing, as most of the colleagues said this evening, the survival and every other thing will not come into place. So there is a problem that's in housing. People are with housing. In conjunction with and we also know to grow to be able to afford their own homes. So, and so greatly appreciate it if our budget is considered for funding so that we provide not just only housing, we provide services and provide also resources that keeps these families in their own home. As this is an American dream, which American is entitled to have. So we are asking that you help us meet this dream.
Thank you, Ms. Brewer. And next speaker is Andrea Sinclair.
Hello, Andrea Sinclair from District 15. So happy to see you, Councilman Triplett. At the core of the process, budgeting reflects our values. Very simply, what is funded flourishes. So the question today is, what values are represented in this current budget? And what I see when I look at the current allocation for LMPD is a continuing prioritization of policing as the primary source of public safety, when there's strong evidence to support exactly the opposite. While this budget, as written, may indeed provide everything needed for more policing, what policing provides, by definition, is law enforcement. It does not, in itself, do anything to remove the root cause of violent crime. And in fact, we see continuing evidence that our current policing processes brings violence to the communities that it's meant to protect. In Louisville, we see where law and order is used to justify violence that would never be used in communities where the police instead protect and serve. Even with the decline in overall staffing, LMPD's budget remains exponentially larger than any other aspect of the public safety area. We can continue to address the falling numbers of police officers nationwide by making police work more appealing, or we can take this opportunity to invest in other ways of achieving public safety. I believe it's time to fully implement alternatives to our current law enforcement models. I do want to praise the work of Councilwoman George and the others involved for their support of deflection programs within the LMPD budget. But as someone who does crisis counseling after police interventions, I have concerns about whether LMPD has the community trust to be associated with that work. I also want to emphasize that we need more than just deflection for non-criminal crisis response. We also need to allocate funding for the community programs who can carry the weight of activities like neighborhood community building, mental health crisis support, addiction recovery, eviction prevention, housing the houseless. You're hearing from plenty of them today and throughout this process. Without both, either is an empty promise. In his introductory letter, Mayor Fisher describes how he accelerated the process of reimagining public safety. But I would argue that the decisions currently being made on the budget distribution is what is truly going to accelerate change. We have seen time and again how criminalizing community problems and increased policing don't fix those problems. We must move money into the groups that have more public safety solutions than the violence we see repeatedly from LMPD. We cannot keep throwing more money at the same solution and expect a better result. What is funded is what flourishes. Budgets are a direct expression of our values. So please, I'm asking you to value our community and the work we can do together. It's critical that we bolster both de-escalation crisis response and community solutions for the ongoing systemic problems our city faces.
Thank you. Wallace McMullen.
I'm Wallace McMullen. I live in Council District 1, and I'm a member of the 100% Renewable Energy Alliance for Louisville. Council members, I'm bringing to you the concern of climate change tonight. We know that if nothing is done, Louisville is going to have catastrophic flooding and more killer heat waves in its future. We had close to record hot temperatures just last week. You have passed the resolution setting a commendable goal of 100% renewable energy powering Metro Louisville by 2030. That's a good goal. It's time to get started on achieving it. This year, we're not in a budget crisis. Now is the time to put some money into action so that that goal isn't just hot air and empty words. I'll suggest to you a couple of examples which might be good starting points. $200,000 is budgeted for minority business incubation. It would be excellent if our Metro staff assisted a minority-owned solar installer business to get going in Louisville. $2.1 million is budgeted to build or rehab 10 homes in minority and predominantly minority neighborhoods. Let's equip those homes with solar systems as part of their appliances as they're rehabbed. We have talked with Louisville Free Public Library. It appears that the Library Foundation will work on funding a pilot solar installation on the roof of the main library if Metro government will just fix the roof. Please, Metro government, do fix the library's roof so we can get that pilot solar project. And we have a preliminary engineering estimate for solar on the roof of the Edison building, which houses the Air Pollution Control District. For an investment of $220,000, the city can expect to save more than $1.4 million in electric bills over the next 20 years. I suggest that the Air Pollution Control Agency would prefer to be powered by clean renewable energy rather than the current coal-powered situation. In conclusion, I'd say there are many more promising opportunities. Lots of American Rescue Plan funding coming. American Rescue Plan money can be used to rescue our future. Metro Council, please use your wisdom to get Louisville started on the path of the future clean energy economy. There will be major benefits in a few years if you do. Thanks for hearing me tonight.
Thank you. Jennifer Chappelle.
Hello. Thank you for having me. My name is Jennifer Chappell. I'm a District 10 resident and the chair of the Jefferson County Soil and Water Conservation District. I serve alongside 6 supervisors to to promote sustainable environmental practices and to propose regenerative solutions for our county. We are one of 121 conservation districts in the state of Kentucky. Jefferson County's position as a predominantly urban conservation district puts us with a unique challenge as we identify and address needs outside of a rural setting. In 2021, our board welcomed 3 newly elected supervisors, all of whom have hit the ground running and have brought their own strengths and talents to the table. As an organization that acts on a federal, state, and county level, there's quite a learning curve. I'd love to share with you some of the amazing things that our board has been up to recently. Last week, we held our 4th annual garden swap for county residents, utilizing the community space at MSD's Logan Street CSO Basin in District 4. Also last weekend, our environmental educator, Erin James, led the installation of a community pollinator garden in Beachmont. Thanks to District 12 Councilwoman Nicole George for helping her with that project. Through a state cost share program, we'll be assisting in the build of 9 new urban high tunnels, bringing the total number of high tunnels in Jefferson County that we have facilitated to 55. We're launching a JCPS pollinator program, pollinator gardens program, and we're currently accepting applications from teachers who are interested in placing a garden in their respective school. We finished our annual tree seedling giveaway, dispersing 300 tree seedlings to JCPS teachers and administrators as recognition for their amazing work throughout 2020. We're now narrowing our search for a new grant-funded demonstration and education space that will help showcase simple conservation practices that can be implemented by any resident. We're also partnering with the Natural Resources Conservation Services to hire a soil technician for Jefferson County. If you know of anyone that's passionate about dirt, we please encourage you to refer them to our office. We launched a brand new website and we maintain a vibrant Facebook community as well. Each council member should have received the district's budget and plan of work in February. We also resent these items again today, and if you never received them, please let us know and we'd be happy to provide you with them. Although we try to diversify our funding pool, we rely heavily on funds from Metro Council to carry out our work that encompasses all 26 Metro Council districts. We use these funds to support our staff and to further our programming so we can leverage our 77 years of experience to ensure a greener future for Louisville. We look forward to your continued partnership. Thank you for your time and for your attention.
Thank you. Nancy Cavalcant.
Good evening, council members and community. My name is Nancy Cavalcante, and I'm a concerned citizen from District 26. I come with an overarching concern for those in our city who continue to be oppressed and marginalized by the decisions that we make in our city, including the budgeting of our funds. In the proposed budget, there are concerns, particularly for me, around the funding for LMPD. One specific item is the professional services line in the amount of $4.6 million that is in the LMPD budget. I've heard various explanations and responses to questions regarding these funds to include everything from deflection programs, the GVI program, and contracts. In the LMPD budget meeting, we were told that $2.9 million is for the deflection programs that are to be defined by the U of L study that is ongoing at this time. When asked about the use of the balance of the $1.7 million, there has been no clearly articulated response. Given the continued lack of leadership we've seen around policing in our city, I question why the mayor's office would have put these funds in the LMPD budget, even as a placeholder for future work, as we've been told. The Office of Management and Budget committed to providing a summary of all monies across the entire budget that are slated for the use of LMPD. I've not seen that published to date. I do support the work that is being done by Chantrice Martin to divest from the LMPD and invest in social services for this city. I do not support the placement or management of any funds for these services in the LMPD budget. I ask that you look strategically at placing these funds in a more appropriate office or agency budget. As mentioned by Kara earlier, I also implore you that the very least to make any funding in the Metro Council proposed budget for LMPD contingent on renegotiating the problematic FOP contract provisions. As long as the FOP has this stranglehold over our city, policing will not change and the efforts to deflect through other programs will fail. The DOJ did not come here because we're a model city and things are working well. Dismantle this corruption and create real transparency, not just promised transparency, and accountability through budget controls. Contingent funding is a practical and effective declaration of our values. Now is the time, Louisville, we can do this. We're counting on you, the Metro Council, our elected officials and representatives to carry the voice of the people into this budgeting process and bring a chance for change in our city. We continue to say her name in the hope for change. Breonna Taylor.
Thank you. Amber Pendleton.
Good evening, council members. My name is Dr. Amber Pendleton, and I'm a pediatrician at Norton Children's. I'm here today because I believe that the Office for Safe and Healthy Neighborhoods is a really critical part of building public safety in Louisville and needs your full support in this year's budget. I'm a resident of District 8, but for the past 10 years, I've cared for children and families who primarily live in West Louisville. And today, I'd like to speak to you on behalf of the families who have trusted me as their pediatrician. So we all know that violence, especially gun violence, is devastating our city, but I'm here to share with you how I see it affecting our children. Children are born with a light in their eyes. When they look up at you, you see hope and you see promise. But I will tell you that for the children who live in communities where they hear gunshots, they feel threatened and scared all the time, and they grieve the loss of loved ones, you see that light dim. But the worst is when I see the light go out. So I recently had a teenage girl come to see me for a well child check, and she showed me her infected gunshot wound, and she told me she wanted to commit suicide. I had a young boy in my office who sobbed and rocked as he explained how he held his mother after she was shot and until she died in his arms. It's too much. We have to act, and we owe it to our children. And I'm here to tell you what I think we should do. We know that law enforcement can't do it alone. And as an expert in child health, I will tell you that the solutions that work are always the ones where we build strong partnerships and bridges within our community. So at Norton Children's, we are connecting with programs like Pivot to Peace. You heard from Deborah Barnes-Byers earlier today. And we're working with the Office of Safe and Healthy Neighborhoods because we need their help. We can identify children who are at high risk. We know families who have already experienced violent trauma. And we know that the evidence-based strategies that they're using at Pivot to Peace work. They make a difference. They create programs like mentoring families and connecting them to trauma-informed mental health care. They provide crisis intervention, and they work to prevent retaliation. They even address families' very most basic needs, and they meet families where they are, even if that's on the street. And I ask that you provide full funding support for the Office for Safe and Healthy Neighborhoods so that we can work together and create partnerships with healthcare and other important partnerships in the community, because it's important that our children all of our children in the city have a chance to thrive. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Robert Bell.
I'm Robert Lavertis Bell. I'm a public school teacher, a resident of District 4, and co-chair of the Louisville chapter of the Democratic Socialists of America. So I've noticed that the signs that used to crow about this city being a possibility city have mostly come down over the past year or so. I think over the past year, very few people, even those who are as out of touch as our mayor, would speak about this city with such hubris. Sometimes, frankly, it feels like we're hardly possibly a city rather than a possibility city. So we see libraries closed, swimming pools closed, fire stations. Basic considerations for our most vulnerable citizens are basically ignored. Despite our love for this city, it feels at times that we're a replacement level city with a replacement level leadership, and we have a replacement level budget that befits it. It could have been churned out in the mid-sized neoliberal city budget factory. But this doesn't have to be the case. After all the eyes of the world were on this city over the past year for all the wrong reasons, our council has the ability to produce and pass a budget that would indicate that this city is indeed as smart, as compassionate, as unique as Mayor Fisher's brand ambassadors used to say that we were. Speaking in favor of Louisville DSA's People's Budget Amendment. The People's Budget Amendment would empower our community by revitalizing existing community services, returning vital services that were previously cut, and provides for new inventive spending that would place the city at the forefront of progressive governance. And we can do all of this, while putting some meat on the bones of some of the deafening cries that came out of last year's protests. We must defund the police. Now, we don't need to defund the police because we want retribution for the killing of Breonna Taylor. We don't even need to defund the police because policing, as we know it, is a failed model for attending to the public safety and health of all of our citizens. While that's true, we need to defund the police, frankly, because that's where the money is. Even if the political will for a tax rate increase did exist among our city's leadership, preemption from the state legislature would likely render that bravery moot. So basic, let alone exemplary, public services require money. Even if policing weren't a failed model for public safety, and it is, even if the LMPD weren't a particularly unaccountable gang of criminal cretins, and they are, there would still be a standing imperative to cut this budget because it's too much money and we need this money to go into real services for real people. Now, you're going to hear a lot about the people's budget over the coming weeks, and some of the people will lazily imply that it's unserious or unrealistic. Actually, what's being proposed are reasonable surgical cuts, only 15% to the LMPD budget this year, to reinvest in our broad community and evidence-based and inventive ways that those relatively small can have a huge dramatic impact on our entire city's well-being. Reopening the library in Fern Creek, Operation Peacemaker, evidence-based non-policing solutions to violent crime, real action on climate change. And there's so much more. Please read more about the people's budget at budget.dsalouisville.org. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Lindsay Wallace.
Hello, Council. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
My name is Lindsay Wallace, and as a resident of District 5, I am very concerned about this proposed budget. As a city and as people, we fund what we value and who we value, and giving the most significant portion of our resources to LMPD and corrections states loudly and emphatically that our city and its leaders do not care about Black people. Why are we dumping our money into an organization that has proven itself not only ineffective, but violent and corrupt? From the abysmal homicide clearance rates to the blatant use of force against peaceful protesters to the rampant sexual abuse in the Explorer program and beyond, LMPD has proven itself a failed experiment. Council, you have an opportunity now to tell Mayor Fisher that you will not be bullied by the LMPD and blindly fund them without knowing what is included in the forthcoming CBA. Your approval of any budget should be contingent upon Mayor Fisher negotiating all of the dangerous provisions out of the FOP contract. One example of such provisions prohibits suspending police who engage in violent conduct, an absurd protection no other government employee has, while another enables taking complaints from citizens that are classified as informal and destroying them after 90 days. We have an opportunity to invest in the healing and wholeness of our community, to be the compassionate city we claim to be. We have evidence-based best practices from other cities, as well as local leaders with informed, forward-thinking, compassionate plans. You have heard from many of those people, and you will hear from more of them. I support Chantrese Martin's $50 million budget amendment, and I want the council to vote yes in support of that. We don't have to continue with the archaic remnants of a system rooted in white supremacy and birthed from catching formerly enslaved people. We can invest in the social services that will ensure every member of our community has what they need to thrive, which in turn means our community is safer for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Rebecca Frederick.
Ms. Frederick, you're unmuted now.
Thank you. Council members, community members, Mr. Fisher and Ms. Shields. Today, I would like to address the council about the proposed investment in this budget towards increasing policing technologies that uphold intelligence-led policing through data-driven practices and tools. An increase in intelligence-led policing presents in our city as a broad net of surveillance, targeting individuals before they have committed a crime, and over-policing of neighborhoods as a means of state control and occupation that disproportionately impacts Black residents of Louisville. I'm asking that you support Chantrice Martin's budget amendment that invests $50 million in social services by divesting $50 million from LMPD. One area to divest from these is the funds allocated for the technology and equipment that supports intelligence-led, data-driven policing. This includes and is not limited to things like ShotSpotter, drones, Metro Watch camera system, the real-time crime camera unit, stingrays used to extrapolate data from phones and other devices wirelessly, mobile data terminals, computer software licensing and hardware, license plate readers, and much more. There's a potential of $8.8 million that is proposed to go directly to these intelligence-led policing practices and tools. This does not include the salaries or money that is in other areas of the budget that will support this. Data shows that this specific technology I've listed above is used disproportionately and often exclusively in Black neighborhoods of Louisville. The data collected through this technology is then used in programs like the group violence intervention and the deflection models as a way to identify community members to target using mathematical algorithms. With the GVI model specifically, the already existing over-policing and surveillance of Black communities will lead to more state-controlled interventions pre-crime. They will trap Black community members in cycles of state supervision that will have generational impacts on their families without a crime even being committed. It will lead to LMPD showing up at funerals, kids' sporting events, places of employment, churches, and anywhere else they see fit because of a perceived connection to a person or a perceived prediction of crime. The council can use this moment to show up for its community members by divesting from these very clear paths of over-policing and state surveillance that is impacting the health and well-being of our Black community members and future generations. More money to police does not equate to less crime. It equates to more police presence in our communities that would benefit more from an increase in social services and community resources. So again, I ask that the council takes the bold step of supporting Chantrice Martin's budget amendment, investing $50 million into social services and divesting $50 million from LMPD. Thank you.
Thank you. Nat Irvin.
Okay. Good afternoon, council members, and thank you for the invitation to talk a little bit about an experience that I had about 13 months ago. I'm a professor here at the University of Louisville at the College of Business. I also serve as one of the deans for thought leadership and civic engagement. And I was invited by a team at Spalding University to participate in a program that was designed to try to establish or to reestablish a process of building trust between the police department and the community. And it's the first time I'd ever been a part of something like that. So, I agreed to be one of the influencers to try to encourage people to be a part of this process of where you get established, try to reestablish, obviously being a part of this community. It's our 14th year being here. We all know, and you can hear from the testimony that we've already heard today, we've got a serious problem when we talk about trust between the citizens of the community and the police department. But the way that we're going to solve this, if we're going to solve this, has to begin with some kind of a communication, some kind of bridge. And these are very difficult things to do, but I saw the program that Spalding was developing, and I decided to be a part of it. And here's what I witnessed. I witnessed a room full of policemen, maybe about 15 or 20. Many of them, first of all, I'd never met any of them. I saw citizens from all over the community, and particularly from west side of town. Black, brown, Latino, white, everybody. And this was this fabulous conversation about how people were perceiving one another. And what I took from that was this, because, and obviously, and you'll hear from the next presenter, Chandra Irvin, who is at Spalding University, who helped to create it. You'll hear, and I know the council will do its own research on this, but you'll find out that there are a lot of people in this community who want to be a part of a solution. And as I see it, the only solution is going to be some kind of a bridge. Bridges are very difficult to build. They're easy to take down, but they're very difficult to build, and they're very difficult to sustain. But it really is the only process that nature has given us. that structures societies has given us in order to be able to understand each other. You have to build a bridge, and somebody has to go first, somebody has to go second. But I think that, using university resources, University of Louisville, Spalding University, other universities, the resources that we have in this community, that's an important step. That's an important community that looks forward. It brings academic research. It brings deep understanding of the way that organizations and communities can work together. And so I want to just commend Spalding University for the effort that it put forth prior to the COVID and prior to the tragic death of Breonna Taylor. A lot of progress was being made, and I hope that this council will not overlook the hundreds of people that were participating in a well-intentioned effort to build a bridge between the communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Chandra Irvin.
Hello, and thank you. I'm here to speak about building relations through the Office of Equity, and appreciate the comments that Nat has just made. Like many places in our country, race relations has long been a concern in Louisville, and by 2018, many people who cared about police and race relations in Louisville no longer wanted to even talk about it. There had been enough talk, enough town halls. There had been enough police and resident encounters where no one listened, or too few encounters where that it led to nothing. Spalding University was asked to help. So in 2019, collaborating with many community members, we developed a process where concerned police and residents came to action sessions to share their concerns, hopes, and identify actions that both groups could take to improve public safety and public trust. This process involved 450 people from different parts of the community. And to tell you the truth, both residents and police were often skeptical when they came to what we call action sessions to have these conversations. But what I want to underscore with you are 3 points. The first one is, despite their skepticism, residents and police came, and they came because they cared. But beyond that, once they were seated together, sharing their concerns, their hopes, and their possibilities for action, they were often reluctant to leave the libraries, the schools, the churches, the rehab centers, the museums that had hosted them. Trust was being seeded at that time, and actions were being discussed. When in March 2020, COVID interrupted the action sessions, 25 organizations were scheduled to host, and 15 more were waiting in the queue to be scheduled. At our final session, hosted by Joshua Tabernacle and Gospel Missionary Church, there were so many people in the room that we couldn't even get another chair there. People came because people cared. Fewer than 10% of the police had participated in the sessions when COVID hit, but several of those who did sought to understand rather than command during the protest and became agents of de-escalation. It has been our experience that people in our community want to remember what has happened that has brought us to this place. They want to remember by bringing even more people into the conversations. They want to be centered by asking questions like who we are and what anchors us. They want to relate honestly with one another. They want to restructure our processes and our policies to be more equitable so we all can thrive. People in our community care. We must continue to build relations because it would be a mistake to discount and dismiss the individual and collective investments people have already made to make our city better. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. We have had a couple of people on the list who are not in the meeting. I'm just going to call their names. I don't believe they're in the meeting to respond, but John Green or Brett Bachman. We'll move on to the next speaker, Peter Weber. Mr. Weber?
Can you hear me?
We can now, yes, sir.
Oh, thank you. Good evening, council members and all listening. My name is Pete Weber, and I'm speaking to you as a concerned citizen from District 14. We are living in a time of ongoing, unprecedented challenges. Global warming, the pandemic, racial discrimination, just some of the core issues facing us. And none of those easy to fix. But there's another big challenge, economic imbalance, which we can do something about. We know that there are folks who have, we know the folks out there with immense wealth, while at the same time, there are folks who have no home, families who are food insecure, and many who are hurting one way or another. Serious changes to help ease their hurt have needed to be made for decades, but it still goes on. We have to know that this scenario is wrong. We, as modern Homo sapiens, have been here for some 40,000 years. We are not new at this. It boggles the mind that we still do not have it right. But we can make some of it right now. We can change the scenario now, here, by thinking beyond the comfort status quo zone. To the great folks here listening, you have the power to change that scenario by perhaps starting a reform movement, by doing whatever it takes to better help people who are hurting. It could put us on the map as a city who really cares for their citizens, especially those who may not have a voice here, but are most likely impacted negatively by certain budget decisions. We have a golden chance here in this budget cycle to make a difference in how we treat our citizens and how we help those less fortunate. Show us, we the people of Metro Louisville, show us that you really care. Please look over the alternative proposal for innovative, insightful ways to look at the budget in ways that can really help all our people. Thank you.
Thank you. Moira Scott Payne.
Good evening. I'm Moira Scott Payne, President of Kentucky College of Art and Design. Thank you for the opportunity to present today. We're asking for help to expand our recruitment program, DRAW, into underserved high schools in the city. We've also applied for the opportunity to bring free art science conversations to the community. DRAW is bringing access to an exceptional and affordable four-year BFA, arming graduates with the creative capital and digital skills needed to succeed in a wide variety of industries. Many students and families cannot imagine being part of the post-secondary education process, and we aim to provide the hands-on, pragmatic help in the schools, in the communities, that will enable students to jump through the complicated college application hoops and processes. A 2018 study by the Off-Campus Recruiting Research Project found that colleges and universities appear to prioritize wealthy high schools. This program seeks to change that and allow us to reach students throughout the Louisville area. Excellence in both higher education and the arts is critical for a vibrant, diverse, and relevant city. Businesses go where the talent is. Louisville describes itself as a city of the arts, but we must go beyond entertainment, one-off small projects, perhaps build on those things. In order to focus on a sustained pathway to success for Louisville's up-and-coming high school talent, a world-class art school not only transforms lives, it will also transform our neighborhoods, our city, and our economy. Americans for the Arts, in its Arts and Economic Prosperity study, found that the arts in Louisville generated over $10 million in local government revenue. Savannah College of Art and Design and the Maryland Institute are examples of art colleges that have radically changed the economies of their cities. CAGCAD has been successful. During our first 10 years affiliated with the local university and other partners, we grew to 140 students and a $3.5 million in annual revenue. Students from the program were accepted to top graduate schools. A former graduate came to Kentucky as a Cambodian refugee, and on graduating went on to be accepted in top master's programs in the UK and the US. The Royal College in London, Goldsmiths London, and CalArts here in the US. Art schools immediately create an international context for its students. The study of contemporary arts is global. In 2018, KCAD gained a license from the Kentucky Council on Post-Secondary Education to grant a BFA in studio art as an independent institution. 3 years ago, we started all over again from scratch, no income, only fundraised dollars, only this time proudly as Kentucky's only 4-year independent College of Art and Design. Until we are eligible for federal financial aid, all of our students are on full 4-year tuition scholarships, which we fundraise for on an annual basis. We are grateful for that the Mayor's budget recommends investing in the future of arts education in Louisville. We ask that the recommended funds remain in the budget. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Channing Banks.
Yes, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, well, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Channing Banks. I am a college graduate of Simmons College of Kentucky, also a former resident of the Family Scholar House. And I was speaking on behalf of the Parkland Library. I believe that having a library back in our neighborhood will be vital to the upbringing of the children around here, especially since that statistics have proven that prisons and the outlook of the prisons being built is based on the the reading scores, of 4th and 5th grade children, especially those of Black males. So I believe it is a very eerie, complex situation where the Parkland Library, when it was shut down, it was literally replaced with the police substation. So I believe that is a very eerie coincidence, according to the research that shows that the prison system is based on 4th and 5th grade reading scores. So I believe that it is vital to the upbringing of the children in this neighborhood. Me, a father of 4 daughters, literally one at every level, a rising sophomore, a rising 7th grader, and a rising 4th grader, as well as a 1-year-old baby girl. And we believe highly in education, especially here in the Parkland neighborhood, where there are literally 4 elementary schools, 1 middle school, and 1 charter school, all-male charter school, that would directly benefit from the library being here in the neighborhood. So I thank you all for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. Lori Malone.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Lori Malone, and I'm the Executive Director of Peace Education Program, a nonprofit organization that teaches conflict resolution, peer mediation, and prejudice reduction. We serve youth from preschool into adulthood with these programs. We work with educators, youth workers, community partners, and the participants themselves. So I'm here to talk about our organization's request for funding. PSED requested funds to help fund peace zones, in particular conflict resolution and peer mediation programs at community and school sites. We made that request earlier this year with COVID restrictions still in place. We were rather conservative in our request, as we were all dealing with the uncertainties of planning in a pandemic. But as the restrictions begin to lift and JCPS plans to return to in-person everyday class schedule, we see the demand will be great for our services in the community, and we're ready to serve. As we all prepare for a new normal, we all know it's not going to be normal at all, especially for our youth and young adults who've experienced so much disruption this year: violence, unrest, social isolation, loss of loved ones, fear and anxiety, even abuse and neglect. They're going to need PSED more than ever, and we're going to be there for them, but we cannot do this work alone. So I'm asking you to partner with us. I'm asking council to fund our program at the requested amount and to ensure our reach to the city's most vulnerable citizens. Thank you for your time and your consideration.
Thank you. Hallie Leninger.
Just unmute. Hi, thank you for taking the time to listen to me. My name is Hallie Leninger. I'm an allied healthcare provider in pediatrics at Norton Children's and a longtime resident of District 6. As previous speakers have pointed out, The law enforcement budget has increased every year since 2001, and yet violent crime is continuing to trend up. And it made me wonder, I had to think about this from a kind of a medical perspective. What if we thought about the city as like a patient, and the police budget is a medical treatment we're administering to our patient, right? And we've been administering police treatment every year since 2004. And while our patient's getting sicker, this treatment is costing our patient so much money that he can't see other providers and get their treatment. He can't pursue anything else. And while I've talked to MDs around the country, and no one else is having success with my treatment either. It hasn't ever been shown to work anywhere. So, well, naturally, I'm planning to administer it in a 4.3% higher dose this year. What would you say to that, doctor? I don't think he would have a job anymore. I don't think he'd have a medical license. In medicine, we can't afford to keep doubling down on treatment that's killing our patients, and our city can't afford to keep doubling down on police spending when it isn't making us healthier or safer either. We have to do something new. We must defund LMPD and refund social services. We must pass the People's Budget Amendment. Reallocating these funds to desperately needed social services would materially improve the lives of the children I see in clinic every day. Our children need parks and pools and libraries. They need safe, sane, healthy parents that are receiving treatment for their drug addiction and their mental health concerns. And our children need us to take seriously and address the racial disparities in healthcare in our city. The People's Budget Amendment, which can be found at budget.dsalouisville.org, is the right path forward for a safe and healthy Louisville. Thank you.
Thank you. Brittany Lutke.
Yes, good evening. My name is Brittany Lutke, and I am the CEO for Kids Center for Pediatric Therapies. And I want you to take a moment and think about your day, how it began, how you got out of bed. Maybe next you took a shower and went off to work, and you communicated with others like in this meeting. And maybe later you'll go have dinner with your family or a friend. Now, you might sound weird that I'm asking you to think about those things because they're probably natural to you. But those everyday tasks that enable independence is only one item that we help our youngest neighbors with. We serve children with a variety of special needs and disabilities by no fault of their own. We provide medically focused therapy like physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech language therapy, behavioral health, nutrition consulting, and more. And as you review the budget, I ask you, please don't forget about people with disabilities. What we're asking would be a small part of the budget, but I guarantee you it would make a big impact. Kids Center has made a promise to our community that we will provide care to a child regardless of their insurance status or financial situation, but that promise is getting harder and harder to keep. On average, we lose about $57 per therapy session, and contributing factors include treating a high population of Medicaid clients that don't have a lot of options of other places to go, low reimbursement rates from insurance companies for pediatric services, and also families with insurance coverage that struggle to pay their share of medical costs, and they're trying to make ends meet in their own household. While we're able to self-generate revenue to cover this deficit, like fundraising and grants, the gap is growing. Our services are in high demand. Each day right now, we are adding children to our wait list. Last week, it was 40 kids in 1 week alone. And if it weren't for Kids Center, 1,000 kids right here in our community in Louisville would go without care. And we have over 300 waiting. To give you an idea, the wait for our speech therapy is over 6 months. Early childhood development is crucial for a child's social and emotional well-being, as well as setting their foundation for learning as they begin school. 6 months is just way too long. I hope you will consider investing in our children. These kids are the most vulnerable with the smallest voices, but there is a strong correlation between poverty and disability. And together we can decrease that statistic in Louisville. You'll not only make an impact today, but for years to come as these kids grow by setting them up for independence and success. So I ask, please join us and see the ability in people with disabilities. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Keith Miller.
Good afternoon. I hope you can hear me okay.
I believe we can.
Okay, all right. Well, I appreciate the opportunity to talk to all of you council members. I'm a trauma surgeon at the University of Louisville Hospital. I thank you also for your past efforts in addressing community safety issues. In my world, certainly when I get called by trauma colleagues across the country and the words you never want to hear are, so I bet you all have been busy, because that generally means that people in our city are dying or being hurt at tragic rates that somehow grab national headlines. Over the last several months, obviously, as you all know, I've heard these words all too often from surgeons across the country, from big cities that share our issues and big cities that don't. This is unfortunately becoming a defining characteristic of our city: horse racing, bourbon, and gun violence. This cannot happen and is not acceptable, as you all know. The budget proposes a 325% increase in public safety, which to me seems closer to proportionate for the scope of the problem. What do I mean by that? 1,000 injuries, over 80% of which are interpersonal violent injuries, with 180 fatalities. If you take an average age of 30 years old, do the calculation with an average life expectancy of 75 years old, and you have 8,000 potential years of life lost to gun violence. Everyone's familiar with COVID as a public health issue. It's tragic. It's changed our daily lives in innumerable ways. There's been a tremendous response here in Jefferson County. Over the same time period I just alluded to, there's been 1,000 deaths from the COVID pandemic. Average age is 69 to 70. That's 5,000 to 6,000 years of potential life lost to COVID-19 in Jefferson County. In our city, we have lost more years of potential life to gun violence than we have to the COVID-19 pandemic. Believe me, I'm not saying 1 year of life is any more or less important than any other year. And my heart goes out to those who have lost loved ones to COVID-19. I'm not downplaying the impact of COVID-19 in our country. The response in our region was proportionate to the issue. I'm simply saying that both issues are tragic and both require a proportionate response from our community. A public health approach involves attacking a complex problem, whether it's a virus, whether it's gun violence, from multiple different angles. There are individual, group, community, and societal issues that contribute here. Community engagement initiatives are obviously a crucial step. Initiatives like Pivot to Peace, the hospital-based violent injury prevention program that you all have supported in the past and we're very thankful for, in conjunction with the Office of Safe and Healthy Neighborhoods, Peace Education, and multiple other partners throughout the community. Because of your support, from the start of U of L's hospital's formal partnership with the Office of Safe and Healthy Neighborhoods in January of 2019 until today, resources have been offered to 1,695 patients with injuries due to violence. That's gunshot wounds and that's stabbing injuries. Needs like safety, mental health, education, employment, substance abuse, functional ability, and supportive care were assessed because of you. And because of you, many patients have been connected to community resources with the potential to address those needs. Preventative community components are essential when it comes to public safety. The majority of my days are spent reacting to injuries that have already happened. Preventative measures negate the necessity for that reaction. Many of the individuals you've heard from today represent potential investments by this community and by your council in this community to reimagine what public safety looks like. And I can't think of anything more important. So I certainly appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Kalisha Young.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right. So being a single mom, everything I do is for my 4 children. And from the moment I found out that I was pregnant and every moment since, my kids have been my motivation. I work hard to provide for them every opportunity because they truly deserve the world. I enrolled in Family Scholar House for them, and I am currently pursuing my Bachelor's of Social Work at Spalding University, which I will graduate with in December of this year. And I know this degree will allow me not only help my children, but children and families throughout our community. I currently live in the Parkland neighborhood, and I believe a library would be a huge win for our community. Libraries bring more than books. They bring programming, technology, and a place for kids and adults to expand their mind and create possibilities. My kids love to read. How incredible would it be for us to be able to walk to the library and check out books, attend book clubs, and for them to know what it's like to have a safe space to imagine and explore. We have seen over the past year need to be plugged in. They crave healthy environments, and we need more of those type of places in Parkland. Libraries can be found throughout our city, and Parkland needs to be included in that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ariana Levinson.
Good evening, Councilman Hollander and Councilman Armstrong Chambers, Ms. Howard, and everybody who's here today. I'm a concerned citizen from District 8, and as you know, I've been working with the 490 project. Lindsay mentioned the provisions in the contract that make it extraordinarily difficult to suspend officers who break standard operating procedures or act aggressively or violently towards citizens whom they have sworn to protect. These contract provisions are completely out of line with those in other Metro collective bargaining agreements and with those in even other FOP contracts with neighboring cities such as Nashville, Indianapolis, and Cincinnati. Another unheard clause in the LMPD collective bargaining agreement is the one that prohibits laying off an officer. So it literally says no layoffs. Now, I do not know D, but when I saw a videotape of an officer punching him in the face and no other officer stepping in, it broke my heart open even wider. My oldest son is big. He's over 6 feet, but he is a well-meaning child in spirit. I do not understand how anyone who has a son whom they love could see that video and not feel outraged. We need contract provisions that enable Metro Council to support the work of Chantrice and the others to divest from police and invest in social services. We need contract provisions that keep our young people safe, not provisions that prohibit layoffs. Please pass a budget that provides funding for LMPD contingent on renegotiating these problematic contract provisions. Contingent funding is a practical and effective declaration of our values. Thank you.
Thank you. Elizabeth Wessels Martin.
Apologize, I didn't realize I was muted. Good evening, council members, and thank you for this opportunity to speak. I'm Elizabeth Wessels Martin, President and CEO of the Center for Women and Families, which is located in District 4. We're the only service provider for victims of domestic, intimate partner, and sexual violence for the Louisville, Jefferson County area, and we serve victims 24/7, 365 days a year. In 2020, as we all know, the pandemic hit hard for many, and for many, quarantining at home may not have been so bad. But for those who have any amount of violence in their homes and in their relationships, the pandemic brought isolation, loss of support systems, loss of jobs, increase in drugs and alcohol, extreme fear, and sadly, death. This had all the perfect ingredients for lethal domestic, intimate partner violence and sexual assault, which we saw firsthand. The Center for Women and Families are first responders for these victims and their families. We saw the impact of the variables that the pandemic inflicted. The center's front line is its crisis response call center. In this fiscal year, which does not end until June 30th, we have already taken 8,962 calls. This is 403 crisis calls more than last year. And the average length of call is 36 minutes, and last year the average length of call was 21. This is important data because the center has 11 staff. So answering those calls is 814 calls per staff per year. In addition, what we saw was that crisis response staff are spending much more time counseling victims, trying to identify resources, and helping them safety plan when they're stuck at home with perpetrators. And because of the loss of jobs, we're still seeing the impact that the pandemic has had, regardless of whether the city has reopened and people can take masks off. The center receives EAF money to fund one of these crisis response positions. In this year's city budget, the crisis response position has been cut by approximately 30%. Due to the center providing all services at 100% free, we are very unfortunately dependent upon EAF money to fund this position. The center cannot make up the additional money. As you can see, the impact of losing one position to answer these crisis calls will have a major impact on our ability to safety plan and save lives. I am asking that the Metro Council fully fund this crisis response advocate position so that the Center for Women and Families can continue to answer calls from victims whose lives are at risk. Thank you.
Thank you. Sharon Bond.
Hello, my name is Sharon Bond, and I'm a resident of District 5 in West Louisville. I'm a graduate of U of L and Bellarmine University and recently retired from a 40-plus year career with the federal government. My family and I have a strong connection to the Chickasaw neighborhood. My parents and grandparents were homeowners in West Louisville and were part of a generation that took great pride in their neighborhood, established strong bonds with one another, and increased community cohesion. They were homeowners as well as owners of a small business. It was important to own property, to have something to leave to their heirs, and to build wealth for future generations. I, like others, traveled to other parts of the city to shop, dine, or pursue entertainment. And it's clear to me that what West Louisville lacks is largely attributable to inadequate investment, opportunities, and intention, not because of a lack of desire on the part of the residents to make things better. The health of the Commonwealth in Louisville Metro depends upon a strong West Louisville. That's why I am excited about the West Louisville Opportunity Partnership. Much thought has been given to the structure of the partnership. The institutions involved are strong, skilled, and committed to making the partnership work. The advisory board will also play a vital role in the partnership. The legislation and funding will result in a major upgrade to West Louisville, one that will start the process of creating generational wealth for our community. The success of the partnership, like any significant endeavor, hinges upon adequate funding. Similar to the commitment by the Commonwealth, the funding that's proposed in the mayor's budget is critical and demonstrates Louisville Metro's commitment to the success of the partnership. Private investment is needed for this to work, but the private sector needs to know that the state and local governments are committed to making the partnership work. This is a critical first step. Are there still issues to be addressed? Without question. That's why efforts have been and will continue to be made to involve citizens who live west of 9th in raising concerns that need to be addressed, proposing ideas, and reaching out to others to be a part of the process. The establishment of the TIF district will be a means to help ensure that local tax dollars stay in the neighborhoods for long-term economic development. With this critical funding in the budget, we can leverage the investment that's been made. Dollars will remain in West Louisville, contributing to a vibrant Louisville metro economy. The spin-off effects are far-reaching and should not be underestimated. Economic development, environmental justice, health and safety, environmental impacts, the ability to take advantage of the natural resources in our community, pride, hope, diversity, and an appreciation for all that the West End adds to our city. The possibilities are endless, but we have to take the first step and commit to making this partnership a success. Approving the $5 million in seed money in the mayor's budget is an essential first step. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Eddie Davis had signed up for the meeting, but I don't believe he is in the meeting currently. The next speaker is Catherine Mikas.
Good evening. My name is Kathy Mikas. I'm the Kentucky chapter lead for Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America and a 33-year resident of Metro Council District 16. Moms Demand Action is a part of Every Town for Gun Safety. Our purpose is to decrease gun violence and increase public safety across our nation. In doing this work, we follow the evidence. We seek out solutions that have proven to reduce gun violence and to increase public safety, and then we advocate for the implementation of these strategies more broadly across the country. I'm here today to urge you to invest in gun violence intervention and prevention and for Metro Council to support the mayor's proposed budget for the Office of Safe and Healthy Neighborhoods. For more than a year, the COVID-19 pandemic has raged across our country, across the Commonwealth, and our community. It has worsened the conditions that lead to gun violence, like housing and income inequality, and it has squeezed the social service programs that address these issues. Based on data from Everytown, in a normal year, Jefferson County could expect to experience about 86 homicides and about 69 gun suicides. According to the data that was provided by LMPD in January of this year, last year during 2020, we lost 173 souls to gun homicides. Like much of the nation, we had an epidemic of gun violence that was exacerbated by the global pandemic. Everytown supports evidence-based, community-led public safety strategies which have been shown to reduce gun violence in cities across the country. Violence tends to spread along networks just like diseases like COVID, and as such, it should be addressed like the public health crisis that it is. Step one is to stop the transmission of the impulse toward violence, which is the role of violence intervention programs. These community-based organizations are best placed to diffuse violence before it occurs. In Louisville, I've been fortunate to work with two such organizations, Pivot to Peace and No More Red Dots. Pivot to Peace, as we've heard, works in the hospitals, and they have an outstanding success record of 96% with the people that they've worked with. No More Red Dots works in the community, working to diffuse violence before it happens, and to work with youth to give them a vision of the future that does not include paths to violent behavior. These organizations and others supported by OCEAN are critical to addressing the gun violence that we're experiencing in our city. Louisville has been allocated $388 million from the American Rescue Program. We strongly support the mayor's proposed budget increase for the Office of Safe and Healthy Neighborhoods and applaud his focus on community-based public safety efforts and Build Back Better Together recovery plan. I'm asking that Metro Council allocate sufficient funds to this office to support the life-saving efforts of these and other gun violence prevention efforts. This is an investment in our community that will pay dividends of peace for all of us. Thank you for allowing me this opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Julie Miller.
Hello, I am Julie Miller, a working class citizen. I have lived experience with homelessness. I reside in District 6. Today, I have risen from the ashes, a new creation. I am honored to share these endeavors with your council and to stand before you today. The topic, needs. The target focus, disconnected youth. To address any lack of resources happens by first identifying community needs at heart. I share these needs to fulfill basic human rights, assure a quality of life to all, and to receive a commitment that attests to invest into our city's future people. How do we, the people, endow a legacy worthy of praise to our prosperity, resources, and community itself? When resources and community are met, this offers young adults a platform to transform their lives. Places like Reimage, Kentucky Youth Career Center, through Kentuckiana Works, are a blessing. These places gave to me, from their stockpile, a wealth of knowledge. I now live equipped with an arsenal to use in preparation for life. We, the people, have a choice to use our abilities to lift and raise one another above oppression. We, the people, must decide we are willing to invest our time and funding to appropriate means for a thriving class, a class that one day will do the same for the next generation. To conclude, I ask you to take action. Allocate funds to current youth-centered organizations such as Kentucky Youth Career Center and Reimage. When these places are plentiful in funds, they are the pumping of a heart. As to our city, the body. Without these resources, lives are, indeed, left behind. With these resources, hope is alive and beating on through the veins of our forthcoming generations. By offering some form of life support, this can contribute to a pulse in which keeps our whole community circulating. Therefore, keep these disconnected youth in mind. We are the future. Thank you.
Thank you. J.P. Leninger.
Thank you, council members. My name is J.P. Leninger, a resident of District 6 and one of the co-chairs of Louisville DSA. Mayor Fisher's proposed budget for the upcoming fiscal year includes a 4.3% increase in police spending. In the first budget following the merger of the old city and county governments, Louisville Metro spent $123 million, 18% of the total operating budget, on the police. In this budget, nearly $200 million earmarked for LMPD, representing a whopping 25% of the operating budget. Not only are we spending more every single year on LMPD, we're concentrating a greater and greater share of our tax dollars on one single tool for public safety. Violent crime has risen in Louisville since merger, while Louisville spends more on LMPD and ignores or cuts other vital public services. Cuts borne disproportionately by the poor, the working class, oppressed minorities. The argument that more police spending translates to a safer community is an article of faith with no underpinning in social science or public policy. We can no longer afford Fisher's business as usual approach. None of this addresses the breakdown in community trust in LMPD as an institution, or this year's national reckoning on the racial injustices of policing. LMPD is a force now famous nationwide for reckless brutality and is the target of a Department of Justice investigation. At this very moment, Mayor Fisher continues to negotiate with the FOP for a new collective bargaining agreement with zero input or scrutiny from even you here on the Metro Council, let alone the press or public at large. That's why Louisville DSA proposes the People's Budget Amendment. $28.5 million to be reallocated from police spending back into our community. This represents a modest 15% decrease for LMPD from the proposed budget, leaving the department with over $170 million in remaining funds, still the largest recipient of taxpayer money by nearly $100 million. In the People's Budget Amendment, those savings will be used to fully fund Louisville parks, libraries, public health, and community aid services. Louisville will also invest the savings into community-driven economic development and combating climate change. Instead of spending more on police, Louisville will spend more on services like mental health care and addiction treatment. When we address the root causes of crime and invest meaningfully in our youth and working families, we can prevent violence before it even happens. This is what it really means to reimagine public safety. Reimagining public safety is reopening all swimming pools and other recreational facilities closed under austerity budgeting, expanding accessibility for Cherokee and Iroquois parks. It's funding public health and wellness for addiction treatment, mental health and social work programs for people in crisis, programs to address racial disparities in healthcare. It's funding housing assistance programs. Reimagining public safety is reopening the Fern Creek branch of the library and expanding services for our youth, giving them safe and constructive spaces and fully funding Operation Peacemaker. We ask the Louisville Metro Council to join the public will in rejecting the failed status quo. Council members, I urge you to take up the People's Budget Amendment, which can be found at budget.dsalouisville.org. Thank you.
Thank you. And I know on the agenda we have a list of speakers. I just wanted to note that the previous speaker, Tyrell Hill, canceled earlier today. Next speaker is Stuart Bridgman.
Hello, my name is Stuart Bridgman, and I'm a resident of District 9, and I work for Bridgehaven, which is in District 4. I want to thank the council for the funds that we have received from the EAA grant. That has allowed us last year to reduce hospitalizations by 89% and reduce homelessness by 86%. For the last 8 years, we've reduced incarcerations by 100%. Bridgehaven is a psych rehab program that helps people with severe and persistent mental illness. And we provide group, individual, peer services, and many other programs. We want to thank the council for their funding, and we invite you to come by and visit Bridgehaven. Thank you.
Thank you. Lamont Collins.
Hello, I'm Lamont Collins, founder and CEO of Roots 101 African American Museum. I had the words of James Brown, I just want you to open the door and I get it myself. We just want the opportunity at Roots 101 to be treated like other cultural institutions in this city. We have been nationally recognized across this country, and we've been underfunded and unappreciated by the city of Louisville. We've already ranked top 20 museums opening in the world in 2020 when COVID hit us hard. But since then, we have a new location, a new opportunity. And what I'm asking for you to do is just invest in what we're doing. We're already more than a museum. We partner with Jefferson County School System. We have an endorsement from Jefferson County Teachers Association. And every day, people come through the door proud of what we're doing. So we're more than a museum. And we want the city of Louisville to recognize that. Until this time, we've been recognized, but we haven't been monetized. And I really want the opportunity for you guys to step up and step out, knowing that we'll make a difference in this city. There's not a major city in this country that doesn't have a cultural center to doing what we're doing right here at Roots 101. And we're going to continue to do it. And I just want your support and continue to help us make that dream come true. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Thank you. Trinidad Jackson.
Yes, District 10 community member. Louisville, Kentucky, record number of murders in 2020, on pace to break that record in 2021. Those have been dominant headlines. Are there other headlines that were performatively responsive to COVID-19, George Floyd, and Breonna Taylor uprisings? Sure, they were presented in the context of society's need to tackle racism and health inequities. In fact, in July 2020, I gave a presentation to Metro Council urging our government to declare racism as a public health crisis. On December 1st, 2020, the mayor made the declaration. This declaration uses the phrasing, quote, address the impacts of racism and dismantle systemic racism, end quote. The issue, his declaration conveys nothing that disrupts the white racial framing and white supremacist ideology that has governed the mayor's and the council's decision-making processes year after year after year. First, this is the community's money, of which you all should be good stewards, not LMPD's. Participatory budgeting isn't a new concept to many of you because you were present when that initiative was piloted for certain communities. Yet it's not a culture of practice, and instead community members rush to advocate in 3 minutes and send hasty emails every time the budget cycle comes around. Why is the decision-making process about services that should be centered on the most structurally marginalized dominated by many of you who sit at the pinnacles of power and are often most removed from outcomes of white supremacy and structural marginalization? That's not an approach that sustains equitable human rights. That's not a frame that eliminates oppression. In fact, that fosters it year after year after year. As the violent headlines often place the onus to act onto Black communities, we have been acting with minimal resources, with cultural and structural trauma induced by your legacy decision-making and more. We've been acting and we've been surviving. Miss Deborah, Levon Morris, Terrell Williams, Tonika, and so many more. They are key change agents, warriors who cultivate community health, safety, and aspiration through Pivot to Peace and other initiatives. They genuinely come to work for and contract with a government that continues to perpetuate a culture of abuse, structurally traumatizes them, and devalues their work. That translates to insufficient funding and reinforced, displaced, and damaging narratives being imposed onto our communities. Now, you have a new Office for Safe and Healthy Neighborhoods leader, Monique Williams, who's attempting to be a good steward, but the paradigm through which other leaders view violence and peace work is flawed. We all have a lot of work to do to arrive at a place where the consciousness of our budgetary decisions reflect peace, repair, and liberation for our communities, especially our Black communities. Until then, give the office what it's asking for, $4.5 million, and also vote yes to support Chantrice Martin's $50 million budget amendment.
Thank you. Catherine Skaggs.
Thank you. I am the president of the Library Workers Union. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today, and I would welcome the chance to discuss the state of the Louisville Free Public Library with you in greater detail in the future, as I believe you will find our perspective valuable in understanding the situation in terms of serving our community. I watched the library director's budget presentation and felt the need to provide a voice for library workers. In response to a question by Councilwoman McCraney, morale is low. We have been constantly asked to sacrifice. Wages have stagnated and positions have been cut, casting doubt on the viability of the Louisville Free Public Library as a career path. Most of us were furloughed last year. We are constantly told how essential we are, yet denied step raises and even the inclusion of a basic anti-discrimination statement as we suggested in our contract proposal. It costs nothing to treat people with dignity and compassion. We have met with a baffling reluctance to treat library workers' needs with seriousness and respect. In response to staff and public safety concerns raised, especially over the course of the COVID-19 pandemic, I have been repeatedly told that we are meeting the minimum requirements, as if they were a target to hit, not a low bar to clear. Our libraries, our library workers, our community deserve better than the minimum. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Chris Karagianis.
Thank you. My name is Chris Karagianis. I'm a resident of District 15 and I'm a member of the Democratic Socialists of America. I want to thank all the speakers who have really spoken very well on the need to divest from policing and invest in the material needs of the people in the city. And it should be very clear by now that the myth that policing and public safety are the same thing is no longer tenable. At this point, it's a tragic, ironic fraud whenever we have dollars in a budget that are earmarked for public safety that end up being spent brutalizing our friends and neighbors. And that weighs very heavily on all of us, I know. I want to talk a little bit about the conversations I've had with people about the People's Budget Amendment, people who are skeptical of defunding the police, and sort of the observations I've made there. And the first is that people understand what safety is. Safety is when people are taken care of and when they have what they need to thrive. Safety comes from compassion and care and not from force and the threat of violence. And people understand this. But what people who don't spend all their time paying attention to city politics might not understand is the astronomical amount of money the city spends on the police. And this is one of the key things that the People's Budget Amendment communicates really well. It's a great tool for us to talk to people. If you go to budget.dsalouisville.org, go to the page that says Funding Public Services, and you'll see the list of what we can fund. JP laid it out very well. A lot of other speakers have, so I won't go into a lot of detail there. But if you read that to people and you ask them, does this make our city safer? And the answer is, well, of course that makes our city safer. Those are really important material investments in people that helps keep people safe in a very literal way. And they sort of have the tendency to think that it might be a pie in the sky idea and how can we pay for that? And when you suggest to them that we can pay for that with an 11% reduction in last year's police budget or a 15% reduction in this year's police budget, which the mayor has frankly offensively suggested to increase for 2021, that plants the idea very firmly in people that spending money on police is not spending money on public safety. That there's something else at work here. That being said, I don't have a lot more to add. I think we've had some really great speakers so far, and if anything, at this point, the council can't say that they're not aware of the issue. I encourage everyone to visit budget.dsalouisville.org to read the details. Thank you.
Thank you. The next two speakers have signed up but are not in the meeting, I don't believe. I'll call her name anyway. Christina Miller and Chanel Helm. Next speaker who is in the meeting is David Kennedy.
Evening, Council. I'd like to thank the Council for the opportunity to speak this evening. I lead the National Network for Safe Communities from John Jay College in New York City, which is where I am right this minute. The National Network is supporting Louisville in implementing the Group Violence Intervention, or GVI. Nothing at all works as well as is needed or we would like in violence prevention, but GVI is currently the most effective method we know to reduce violence rapidly while reducing the criminal justice footprint and changing how law enforcement operates. I want to say, since I've been listening this evening, that the statement earlier this evening that GVI relies on predictive algorithms and enhanced surveillance is a misunderstanding. That's not how GVI works, and none of us who do this work would be even associated with it if it did. GVI is a relatively small part of the city's public safety work, as it should be. It's designed to create the immediate reductions in homicides and shootings, the partnership and the trust that will support many of the other initiatives and goals we've heard about tonight. Implementation for GVI is well and truly underway. The initial assessment of community violence has shown the patterns and issues GVI is designed to address are also the patterns and issues in Louisville, which makes us optimistic that this will in fact work here. The GVI Governance Committee is up and running. It's meeting regularly. It's asking the right questions. Designated project management is in place, so institutionalization is underway. There's robust social service participation. The elements of GVI designed to engage with homicides and shootings and center immediate effective intervention and prevention are up and running. And the core city, community, social service, and law enforcement partnership in Louisville has really embraced this. You can feel it, it's palpable. There are items in this budget designed to support this work. There are items centered on victim support, on affirmative outreach to those at highest risk of violence, to provide special services to those at highest risk of violence. There are elements focused on institutionalization, fidelity, sustainability, and I very much hope the council will look at these items seriously. They will really help this work. And I appreciate, again, the opportunity to speak to council this evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Shelby Williams.
Hello, everyone. My name is Shelby Williams, and I'm the VP of Government Affairs and Communications at Greater Louisville, Inc. Thank you for this opportunity to provide feedback on the budget proposal. GLI has been an advocate for the establishment of the Civilian Review Board locally and fully supports the proposed funding and continued funding of the CRB and the Office of the Inspector General. This is important because transparency and accountability are critical for building and sustaining trust between law enforcement and the communities they serve. This is a key priority for GLI, and we applaud this continued effort because it is an important step in improving law enforcement in Louisville and responding to the needs of our community. Thanks so much for your time tonight and for your dedicated service to Louisville. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Judy Jennings.
Hi, my name is Judy Jennings, and I'm with the Louisville Family Justice Advocates. Thank you for this opportunity to speak about the Louisville Metro Department of Corrections budget, which proposes to collect $700,700 in revenues from telephone fees for calls from people incarcerated in the jail. Because of racial disparities in who is arrested and who is or not released pre-trial or who can pay bail, these fees totaling nearly $750,000 will be paid disproportionately by families, loved ones, and community members who are Black and poor. According to yesterday's data, 1,368 people are incarcerated in the main jail complex, and 707, more than one half, are identified as Black. The $700,000 plus is a commission or markup, or also known as a kickback, from Securus Technology, a multi-billion-dollar corporation well known for its economic exploitation of prisoners and their families around the country. The $700,000 plus is only a portion of the money paid by these families and community members who are, because of the complicated and less than transparent fee structure imposed by Securus. Information from community members indicate telephone fees as much as $200 to $410 per month for calls with their incarcerated loved ones. With no video visiting since March 2020, the families have had no alternative means to communicate by voice with their loved ones. Maintaining contact with families and loved ones during incarceration is proven to increase the likelihood of successful reentry when formerly incarcerated people are released. Louisville Metro Department of Corrections is also proposing in its budget to strengthen staffing and programs for reentry. Yet using telephone fees as revenues will create economic barriers to successful reentry. Metro governments and other cities have abolished telephone fees imposed on incarcerated people and their families as racially inequitable and economically unjust. I call on you as Metro Council members and the leaders of LMDC to put people over profits and remove telephone fees from the means of collecting revenue.
Thank you. John Harvey. Mr. Harvey?
Possible.
We can hear you now. Yes, sir.
Okay. Sorry about that. Thank you, Council. Thank you to all the municipal workers that make this very rich hearing possible. And thank you to all who have spoken thus far. So I applaud the proposed increase in funding for the Office of Safe and Healthy Neighborhoods, but we need more. The People's Budget for Louisville, an amendment to the budget proposed by the Louisville Democratic Socialists of America, suggests $1.1 million more to fund Operation Peacemaker, among a violence intervention program, among other programs, instead of more for the police. Instead of more weapons, $10 million for more overtime scams, we need more for housing the homeless, more for parks and recreation and wraparound services. We need $2 million for the Louisville Worker Ownership Fund, where they would never be profitable if Kroger were to do it. We need $6.5 million to reopen the Office of Sustainability, to restore and expand it. So we don't need brutal policing. We don't need excessive policing. We need to communicate compassion with the way we plan. And this is what this is about. This is the budget. We're planning a moral issue. Many of us in this hearing have let it be known that we want a more sane city, one with actual compassion. Orders beyond the familiar slogans that thus far just belie complacency. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, there is a published agenda which shows several other speakers. I've just called their names. I don't believe they are in the meeting. Lynetta Martin, Emily Dyer, Terrell Williams. Next speaker who is in the meeting is Sarah Schramm.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Good evening, council members. My name is Karen Sharon, and I am the director of the Jim King Muscle Senior Wellness Center. We are located in the heart of the Snitzelberg neighborhood, but we have opened our doors to the entire Louisville metro community for 13 years. We are asking this council to reconsider funding this vital program. Most people think of retirement as a happy, carefree time of life with no stress, no responsibilities, and more travel. For most seniors, this just isn't true. Trying to live on a fixed income is a real challenge. They have medical expenses, housing expenses, and transportation issues. Most can't afford travel unless they also receive a pension along with their Social Security. According to Yahoo Finance, Social Security benefits in the Bluegrass State are lower than the national average. In fact, many clients and members of our agency only make $800 to $1,200 per month. Because of the low income that seniors make, these members of our community need the resources and activities offered by Muscle. They have been assisting the seniors of this community by offering free, fun, and healthy activities. They are given the opportunity to socialize with others, through activities that they are interested in to better their mental, physical, and emotional health. I asked Julie, a member from the center, what the center means to her. She said, "It means everything to see my friends smile and just be with them, especially after being isolated with COVID. COVID has made me appreciate being with other people and many of my friends I only get to see at the center." I asked another couple, Marvin and Charlotte, the same question, and they said, "The center means everything to us. It feels like we have nothing else sometimes, and this past year, not being able to see everyone has been so lonely." Because of COVID and the inability to ensure the seniors' safety, we've had socially distanced activities, such as porch visits, food baskets, and trees. Now, given the upwards of 70% of those ages 65 and older in Jefferson County are vaccinated, it's time to bring our seniors back with full access. Given the isolation that seniors experienced in the past year, it is imperative to get seniors in our community back to a normal routine of socializing with others. We at Muscle are asking this council to allocate enough funds to keep the center's doors open so that they do not have to suffer any longer. Each year in the past 13 years, the council has shown they care for our seniors by funding programs that better their health. We ask the council to continue to do so by reviewing the funding for our center and keep seniors healthy, active, and happy. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Leslie Clements.
Hello, and thank you for the opportunity to speak with you all today. My name is Leslie Clements, and I am a lifelong resident of Kentucky, and I've lived in Louisville for the last 20 years. And I'm a proud resident of District 21 and a supporter of the nonprofit organization Louisville Family Justice Advocates. And I have a brother who has been incarcerated, and he has a young son. And so I have seen firsthand how incarceration can negatively impact the health of families, especially children. And a big reason for that negative health impact is the lack of social connection between the person who is incarcerated and their loved ones on the outside. And since the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, all video visitations at our local jail have ceased. And this means that families only have the option to communicate by voice with their loved ones via phone calls. And you heard from Judy Jennings, who spoke earlier on behalf of LFJA, that many families are paying hundreds of dollars a month to stay connected with their incarcerated loved ones. And this is not attainable for many families who were already struggling financially even before the pandemic. These are children who want to talk to their parents. These are parents who want to talk to their children, grandparents, aunts, uncles, brothers, sisters, people who can't afford to talk to their family. So just like Judy, I urge you all to remove that $700,700 of revenue that's listed in the Louisville Metro Department of Corrections budget. And I urge LMDC to stop collecting these fees. This is literally a public health crisis. Population health data tells us that social connectedness is a key social determinant of health. And if you're not familiar with that, social determinants of health are the conditions where we are born, where we live, where we learn, work, play, and they have a profound impact on our health. And these are the things that influence the opportunities that we have to practice healthy behaviors. And ultimately, this is what enhances our ability to live a healthy life. So social connectedness, it's one of those very important social determinants of health. And data tells us that there are direct links between a lack of social connectedness and chronic conditions. Issues like heart disease and diabetes and Alzheimer's, they're increased when you have isolation. So when we talk about social connectedness, we're really talking about the need that we all have for quality relationships that create a sense of belonging and being cared for and valued and supported. And we are social creatures, and people who are incarcerated are social creatures, and so are their families, and we cannot thrive without social connection. So we need to do what other communities have done, and we need to eliminate these fees, and we need to remove that as a revenue generator. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, from the list, Sherry Cornell and Ken Miles have signed up, but neither of them is in the meeting. The next speaker and the last speaker who I believe is in the meeting is Eleanor Hardy.
Yes, I'm right here. My name is Eleanor Hardy. I'm a mom. I'm a new grandmom. I'm a small business owner. I live in the Highlands. I am white. And I say these things because I want to specifically address the council and specifically my councilwoman, Cassie Chambers Armstrong, for District Number 8, because I'm urging you, Ms. Armstrong, and the entire council to be bold with this budget. We cannot afford this budget for our future. Right now, spending this kind of money on our police department is outrageous. And I join all these people, Kara, Nancy, Lindsay, and Ariana, who have spoken. The police contract contains provisions that require issuing military gear, prohibiting electronically surveillance of officers who have engaged in criminal conduct, and it permits officers to review their video cam footage, assuming they turned it on, as required by standard operating procedure, before giving any statement. These are outrageous. We're asking the council to vote no to providing any funds to the LMPD until these provisions are negotiated out of the police contract. The only leverage you have to influence the opaque, non-transparent process of bargaining that the mayor and the FOP engage in is the budget. I find this specifically offensive, especially right here, 1 year after Breonna Taylor's death at the hands of our police state. And you have to know that this is a slap in the face to the community, that this budget addresses very few of the concerns about our police state. White citizens are upset and frustrated too. And as I said, sunshine is required. We need to beam this straight onto our police city contract. And every report about Breonna Taylor's death has proved this to be true. Each new report that you tried to cover up and now is out in the open has been more outrageous than the last. And people in Louisville are sick of this. It shows no leadership from our Metro Council. And I think you all need to realize that it's not just Black citizens who are very frustrated and worried about this. So the truth is going to get out, and you ought to come to grips with it, and you ought to realize that the proposal from Chantrice Martin to take $50 million from the LMPD budget is a great idea. Let's invest it where it's going to make a difference. Feeding people, libraries, medical care, all the other things that people have mentioned in this brilliant conversation tonight. I thank you so much for the opportunity to speak. My hat's off to the clerk for arranging it all, but I really hope that you will be bold and reconsider this budget and vote no.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That concludes the speakers tonight. Again, the other people who are on the list either canceled or have not joined the meeting. So I want to thank everybody who showed up to speak. I want to thank all the council members who are either present or who will be watching the recording of this meeting. There is another way to comment on the Louisville Metro Council and Louisville Metro budget, and you can go to the Louisville Metro Council website and the Louisville Metro Council clerk website and click on the budget comment form. Submit your comments there, and they will be shared with every council member. So you have all day on May 31st to make those comments. It will close then so that we can compile and organize and send all of those comments to every Metro Council member. Again, thank you for everyone who has participated, and I particularly want to thank Sonia Harward, who has made this meeting and the previous meeting go just really remarkably well. This is not easy to do in a pandemic. We would certainly prefer to have people in chambers, and we hope to do that next year. But for now, we're very happy to have heard from so many members of the public. Without objection, we're adjourned. Thank you very much.